Through the lens of her Nikon D850, Alyssa Lewis captured the joyful tears of her friend Rebecca as she exchanged vows with her new husband under a canopy of twinkling lights and white roses. It was a perfect shot, one that would undoubtedly become the centerpiece of the wedding album. What Alyssa didn't capture on camera, however, was the tall, broad-shouldered best man watching her from across the aisle, the man whose gaze hadn't left her since the ceremony began. "Beautiful work," Rebecca whispered as she passed by Alyssa during the reception, squeezing her arm. "Thank you for doing this on such short notice. I knew you'd make magic happen." Alyssa smiled, adjusting her camera strap. "Your original photographer breaking his leg was awful timing, but I'm honored to fill in. Besides, your wedding is stunning. It makes my job easy." The truth was, Alyssa had rearranged her entire weekend schedule to accommodate Rebecca's emergency request. As an up-and-coming photographer in Boston, she couldn't afford to turn down high-profile events like this, especially when they could lead to valuable connections. But more importantly, Rebecca had been her roommate throughout college, and Alyssa would have moved mountains to help her friend on her special day. "Have you met Hunter yet?" Rebecca asked, scanning the room. "He's Matt's best man and oldest friend. They grew up together in Connecticut." "I don't think so," Alyssa replied, checking the settings on her camera. "I've been so focused on getting the right shots that I've barely spoken to anyone." Rebecca's eyes lit up as she spotted someone behind Alyssa. "Perfect timing. Hunter, come meet my photographer savior." Alyssa turned, and her breath caught in her throat. The man approaching them was easily 6'2" with striking blue eyes and dark hair that looked professionally styled yet somehow effortlessly tousled. His tailored charcoal suit accentuated broad shoulders and a trim waist. But what captured her attention most was his smile, warm, genuine, and directed entirely at her. "Hunter O'Connor," he said, extending his hand. His voice was deep and resonant. "You must be the emergency photographer Rebecca hasn't stopped praising all day." Alyssa felt a slight flush warm her cheeks as she shook his hand. "Alyssa Lewis, and I'm just glad I could help." "Alyssa was my roommate at Boston University," Rebecca explained. "She's being modest. She's actually one of the most sought-after event photographers in the city right now." Hunter's eyes remained fixed on Alyssa's. "I can see why. You have an exceptional eye. You've been watching me work." The question slipped out before Alyssa could stop it. His smile widened slightly. "Professional curiosity. I appreciate people who excel at their craft." Rebecca's phone buzzed. "Sorry, the wedding planner needs me." "Hunter, make sure Alyssa gets something to eat, will you? She's been working non-stop since 8 this morning." With a knowing smile, she disappeared into the crowd. Alone with Hunter, Alyssa suddenly felt self-conscious about her simple black dress, chosen to blend into the background while she worked, and the wisps of auburn hair that had escaped her once neat bun. "Rebecca's right," Hunter said, breaking the silence. "You should take a break. The waiters just brought out those little lobster puff things that everyone's fighting over." Alyssa laughed, relaxing slightly. "I suppose I could put the camera down for 10 minutes. 10 whole minutes. How generous of you to your stomach." As they walked toward the buffet, Alyssa noticed several guests nodding deferentially to Hunter. "You seem to know a lot of people here," she observed. "Business connections mostly," he replied vaguely. "Matt and I have known each other since we were 8, so our lives have intertwined in many ways." "And what business are you in?" Alyssa asked, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. Hunter hesitated briefly. "Manufacturing primarily. Though we've diversified quite a bit in recent years." Something in his tone suggested there was much more to the story, but Alyssa didn't press. Instead, she found herself sharing stories about her photography career, how she'd started shooting friends' graduation portraits in college, slowly building her portfolio until she could quit her barista job and pursue photography full-time. "It wasn't glamorous," she admitted. "For the first year, I lived on ramen and caffeine, shooting anything from babies to bar mitzvahs to pay the bills." Hunter leaned forward, genuinely interested. But you stuck with it. That's impressive. Photography isn't just what I do, it's who I am. She glanced toward the dance floor where Rebecca and her new husband swayed to a slow song. I should probably get back to work. The first dance is a key moment. Of course, Hunter said, but as she turned to go, he added, Alyssa, would it be too forward to ask for your number? Maybe we could continue this conversation over dinner sometime. Alyssa hesitated. Dating hadn't been a priority since her last relationship ended messily 8 months ago. But there was something about Hunter that intrigued her a depth behind his confident exterior. I'd like that, she said finally, reciting her number as he entered it into his phone. I'll call you, he promised, and something in his tone told Alyssa he meant it. For the rest of the evening, Alyssa caught glimpses of Hunter laughing with the groom, charming elderly relatives, even helping a young flower girl find her lost slipper. Each time their eyes met across the room, her pulse quickened slightly. By the time she packed up her equipment at midnight, exhaustion had settled into her bones, but a warm anticipation lingered in her chest. Her phone buzzed as she loaded her gear into her car. Great work tonight. Sleep well, photographer extraordinaire. Hunter, she smiled, feeling like a teenager with a crush as she typed back a simple "you too." 3 days later, Alyssa was in her small studio apartment, editing photos from the wedding when her phone rang with an unknown number. Alyssa Lewis Photography, she answered professionally. I'm hoping to speak with the artist, not the business, came Hunter's voice, warm with amusement. Hunter. She couldn't help the smile that spread across her face. I was wondering when you'd call. I would have called sooner, but I had to fly to Chicago for an emergency meeting. I just got back this morning. Emergency meeting on a Sunday. Alyssa raised an eyebrow, though he couldn't see it. The joys of leadership, he replied cryptically. But I'm calling for a much better reason than work. Are you free tomorrow evening? There's a new restaurant on Newberry Street I've been meaning to try. Alyssa glanced at her calendar. She had a newborn photo shoot scheduled for the afternoon, but it would end by 5. I could meet you at 7. Perfect. I'll text you the address, and Alyssa. I'm really looking forward to seeing you again. The restaurant turned out to be Oralia, an exclusive spot that had opened just a month earlier to rave reviews and a 6-week waiting list. Alyssa arrived promptly at 7, wearing a forest green wrap dress that complemented her auburn hair and hazel eyes. The maitre d' led her straight to a corner table where Hunter stood to greet her. You look beautiful, he said, his eyes appreciative but respectful. Thank you, she replied, taking in his tailored navy suit. You clean up pretty well yourself, though you were already impeccably dressed at the wedding. He pulled out her chair. Hazard of the job, I spend too much time in suits. Once seated, Alyssa couldn't help asking, speaking of your job, how did you get a reservation here? I heard the waiting list is insane. A slight smile played at Hunter's lips. Let's just say I know the owner. Before she could inquire further, the sommelier approached with a bottle of wine. Mr. O'Connor, the Shadehow Margox you requested. Alyssa's eyebrows shot up at the mention of a wine she knew cost several $100s a bottle. Hunter noticed her expression and shook his head slightly, as if to say later. Throughout dinner, the conversation flowed easily. Hunter asked thoughtful questions about her photography, seeming genuinely interested in both the artistic and business aspects. In turn, Alyssa learned that Hunter had grown up in Greenwich, Connecticut, earned his MBA from Harvard, and enjoyed sailing when he could find the time. What he didn't mention, and what Alyssa couldn't help but notice, were the deferential nods from the staff and the whispers from nearby tables when they thought neither Hunter nor Alyssa was looking. All right, she said finally, setting down her dessert fork. I've enjoyed our conversation immensely, but I can't help feeling there's something you're not telling me. Hunter studied her face, then nodded slowly. You're right, and I apologize for the omission. I'm the CEO of Meridian Industries. Alyssa blinked. Meridian Industries was one of the largest manufacturing conglomerates in the Northeast, with interests ranging from aerospace components to medical devices. You're not just a CEO, she said slowly. You're, Well, you must be wealthy, Hunter supplied, his expression careful. Yes. But I've found that leading with that information tends to change the way people interact with me. I wanted you to get to know me as a person first. Alyssa absorbed this, remembering the way he'd listened intently to her stories of struggling to establish her business. Most men she dated had either tried to impress her with their achievements or subtly undermined hers. Hunter had done neither. I appreciate that, she said finally. Though I'm slightly mortified that I rambled on about my financial struggles while you probably sign checks with more zeros than my annual income. Hunter reached across the table, his hand covering hers. Don't be. Your passion and determination are impressive regardless of your bank balance. In fact, they're what I found most attractive about you at the wedding. His touch sent a warm current up her arm. So you admit you were watching me. From the moment you bent down to get the perfect angle of the flower girl walking down the aisle, he confessed. You were so focused, so in your element, I couldn't look away. The intensity in his blue eyes made Alyssa's breath catch. I thought the best man was supposed to be focused on supporting the groom. Matt was fine, Hunter said with a grin. 20 years of friendship has taught me when he needs me and when he doesn't. After dinner, Hunter insisted on walking Alyssa to her car, though the restaurant's valet had already brought his Aston Martin around. This was wonderful, she said as they reached her modest Honda Civic. It was, Hunter agreed, his voice soft in the dim light of the parking area. I'd like to see you again, Alyssa. She looked up at him. This man who commanded a business empire yet had spent the evening hanging on her every word about f-stops and composition techniques. I'd like that too. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. She didn't. His lips met hers in a kiss that was gentle yet confident, sending a pleasant shiver down her spine. Good night, Alyssa, he murmured when they finally separated. Good night, CEO, she replied with a small smile, earning a warm laugh from Hunter before she got into her car. Over the next several weeks, Hunter and Alyssa fell into a rhythm. Despite his demanding schedule, which included an unexpected trip to Tokyo and numerous late-night conference calls, he made time to see her at least twice a week. They explored hidden corners of Boston, discovered shared interests in classic films and spicy Thai food, and gradually learned the contours of each other's lives. Alyssa discovered that, beneath Hunter's polished exterior, was a man who valued loyalty above all else, who had worked his way up from department manager to CEO through persistence and innovation, and who anonymously funded scholarships for engineering students from disadvantaged backgrounds. For his part, Hunter seemed endlessly fascinated by Alyssa's creative perspective, often asking her opinion on everything from art installations to the design of Meridian's new headquarters. When she showed him her portfolio, he spent hours going through each image, asking questions about her technique and vision. One Saturday morning, Hunter surprised Alyssa by picking her up in casual clothes jeans and a Henley that showcased his athletic build better than any suit ever could. Where are we going? She asked as they drove out of the city. You mentioned you've been wanting to photograph the autumn foliage, he replied, navigating smoothly through traffic. I know a place in the Berkshires where the colors are spectacular this time of year. My family has a cabin there. The cabin turned out to be a stunning timber home overlooking a pristine lake, surrounded by maples and oaks in brilliant shades of crimson and gold. Alyssa spent the afternoon in photographer's heaven, capturing the play of light through the leaves while Hunter watched contentedly, occasionally serving as her assistant by holding reflectors or carrying extra lenses. As the sun began to set, casting the lake in shimmering orange light, they sat on the dock with mugs of hot cider. Thank you for today, Alyssa said, leaning against Hunter's shoulder. This place is magical. He wrapped an arm around her. My grandfather built this cabin himself. It's the one place where I've always felt completely at peace. He paused, then added softly, I've never brought anyone else here before. The significance of his admission wasn't lost on Alyssa. She turned to face him, setting her mug aside. "Hunter." "I know it's only been a few weeks," he said, his eyes intense, "but I've never felt this way about anyone, Alyssa. When I'm with you, I'm not the CEO or the heir to the O'Connor fortune. I'm just a man who's falling in love with an extraordinary woman." Alyssa's heart raced. She'd been fighting her own growing feelings, afraid of the intensity, afraid of the vast differences in their worlds. But in that moment, with the sunset painting them both in golden light, those fears seemed insignificant. "I'm falling in love with you too," she whispered, and saw relief and joy transform his expression moments before his lips claimed hers in a kiss that left her breathless. They spent the night at the cabin, talking until dawn about their hopes and fears. Hunter confessed his exhaustion with the business world's superficiality, how refreshing it was to be with someone who valued substance over status. Alyssa shared her insecurities about moving in his elite circles, her worry that she'd never quite belong. "You belong with me," Hunter said simply, holding her close as the first rays of morning light filtered through the bedroom window. "The rest is just noise." When they returned to Boston the next evening, reality intruded in the form of paparazzi waiting outside Alyssa's apartment building. Someone had tipped them off about Hunter O'Connor's new girlfriend. "I'm so sorry," Hunter said grimly as his driver navigated around the photographers. "This is exactly what I didn't want to happen." Alyssa felt a flutter of anxiety but squeezed his hand. "It's okay. I'm not thrilled about having my picture taken when I'm not the one behind the camera, but I knew dating you would come with some public interest." "It's more than some," Hunter warned. "The business press has been speculating about my personal life for years." "You might see stories, Hunter," Alyssa interrupted gently. "I'm not scared off that easily." His relief was palpable, but the media attention proved to be just the beginning of their challenges. The following week, Boston Business Journal ran a profile on Hunter that mentioned his relationship with local photographer Alyssa Lewis, in a tone that implied she was merely his latest diversion. Then came the society events, charity galas, and corporate functions, where Alyssa felt the scrutiny of Boston's elite, heard the whispers about the gold-digging photographer, who had somehow caught the attention of one of the city's most eligible bachelors. At a benefit for the Boston Symphony Orchestra, Alyssa overheard two women in the powder room. "She's pretty enough, I suppose," one said, "but hardly his usual type. My daughter went to school with his ex, Victoria Bennett. Now there was someone who understood the responsibilities of his position." "It won't last," the other replied confidently. "These artistic types never do. They can't handle the pressure of our world." Alyssa exited the stall, forcing a smile as the women fell silent, their faces flushing. She washed her hands calmly, though her heart was pounding. "Lovely event, isn't it?" she said pleasantly before walking out, head held high, but the encounter left its mark. That night, as Hunter drove her home, Alyssa was unusually quiet. "What's wrong?" he asked, reaching for her hand. "Nothing," she replied automatically, then sighed. "Actually, that's not true." "Hunter, are you sure about us? About me? Because your world is very different from mine, and people have made it clear they don't think I belong in it." Hunter pulled the car over and turned to face her fully. "Listen to me. Those people, with their judgments and expectations, they don't matter. What matters is how we feel about each other. But they're your peers, your business associates, and many of them are miserable in their calculated, socially advantageous relationships," Hunter interrupted. "Alyssa, do you know what my mother said when I told her about you?" Alyssa shook her head, surprised. "You told your mother about me." "Of course I did. She said it's about time you found someone who sees you and not your bank account. She's dying to meet you, by the way." Tears pricked at Alyssa's eyes. "Really, really?" Hunter cupped her face gently. "I love you, Alyssa. Not because you fit into some predetermined mold, but because you're passionate and authentic and kind. You make me remember who I am beneath all the trappings of success." Alyssa leaned into his touch, the doubt in her heart receding. "I love you too." I'm just not used to being the one people look at. I'm more comfortable observing others through my camera. I know, he said softly. And I'll protect you from it as much as I can, but I need you to promise me something. What's that? Promise you'll tell me when it gets overwhelming. Promise you won't shut me out or walk away without giving us a chance to figure it out together. I promise, Alyssa said, sealing the vow with a kiss. True to his word, Hunter tried to shield Alyssa from the harsher aspects of his public life. He declined invitations to events that would be particularly scrutinizing, arranged private dinners instead of outings to high-profile restaurants, and made it clear to his inner circle that disrespect toward Alyssa would not be tolerated. For her part, Alyssa focused on her growing photography business, which was benefiting from increased exposure. She was careful not to leverage her relationship with Hunter professionally, but the connection inevitably opened doors. When the Museum of Fine Arts approached her about exhibiting her series on Boston's changing neighborhoods, she initially wondered if Hunter had pulled strings, until the curator specifically mentioned having seen her work in a local gallery months before they'd met. 6 months into their relationship, Hunter invited Alyssa to accompany him to a manufacturing conference in San Francisco. It'll be mostly boring business talk, he warned, but I thought we could extend the trip, explore the coast together afterward. Alyssa agreed enthusiastically, packing both elegant attire for the conference events and casual clothes for their planned coastal drive. The first 2 days went smoothly, with Hunter attending sessions while Alyssa explored the city with her camera, meeting him for dinners and one cocktail reception where she charmed several of his colleagues with her genuine interest in their work. On the 3rd evening, however, disaster struck. Hunter was scheduled to deliver a keynote address at the conference gala. Alyssa, sitting at a table near the front, watched proudly as he took the stage, commanding the room with his presence and insight. She was so focused on him that she didn't notice the waiter refilling her water glass until he accidentally knocked it over, drenching her silk dress. Mortified but determined not to create a scene during Hunter's important moment, Alyssa quietly excused herself to the ladies' room. She was blotting at the stain when the door opened and a tall, elegantly dressed blonde woman entered. "Oh my," the woman said, eyeing Alyssa's soaked dress. "That's unfortunate. Just a little water," Alyssa replied with a self-deprecating smile. "I'll dry." The woman studied her thoughtfully. "You're Hunter O'Connor's new girlfriend, aren't you, the photographer?" "Yes, I'm Alyssa Lewis." She extended her hand, which the woman took after a slight hesitation. "Victoria Bennett. Hunter and I dated for about a year a while back." Alyssa's stomach tightened as she recognized the name from the overheard conversation at the symphony benefit. "Nice to meet you." Victoria leaned against the counter, clearly in no hurry to leave. "Hunter seems quite taken with you. It's refreshing, actually. When we were together, he was so consumed by the Meridian expansion that he barely had time for a relationship." "He works hard," Alyssa acknowledged, "but he makes time for what matters to him." Something flashed in Victoria's eyes, regret, perhaps, or envy. "Some advice, if I may." "Hunter needs a partner who understands the demands of his position. Someone who won't resent the late nights, the travel, the constant scrutiny." "I appreciate the concern," Alyssa said carefully, "but Hunter and I communicate very well about those challenges." Victoria smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Of course. Well, I should get back. Good luck with the dress." When Alyssa returned to the ballroom, Hunter had finished his speech and was scanning the crowd, visibly relieved when he spotted her. "Where did you disappear to?" he asked, taking her hand. "I looked for you right after I finished. Small wardrobe malfunction," she explained, gesturing to her still damp dress. "Also, I met your ex in the ladies' room." Hunter's expression darkened. "Victoria is here. I had no idea she'd be attending." She seemed friendly enough, Alyssa said diplomatically. "Victoria doesn't do anything without calculation," Hunter replied, his tone unusually hard. "What did she say to you?" Alyssa hesitated, then decided honesty was best. She implied that I might not be equipped to handle the demands of your lifestyle long term. Hunter's jaw clenched. That's rich, coming from her. Victoria wanted the benefits of being with me without any of the actual relationship work. When I asked her to join me for Christmas with my family instead of the Vanderwells Gala in Aspen, you'd have thought I suggested she give up oxygen. Seeing the genuine irritation on his face, Alyssa felt a wave of relief. So you're not secretly wishing I were more like her. More polished, more at home in your world. Hunter's expression softened immediately. God, no. Alyssa, being with you is the first time I've felt like myself in a relationship. You care about me, not what I represent. He pulled her close, unconcerned about the damp spot her dress left on his tuxedo. I love you exactly as you are. The rest of the trip unfolded like a dream. They drove down the Pacific Coast Highway in a convertible, stopping at small towns and scenic overlooks. Hunter seemed to shed years of tension as they explored, laughing more freely than Alyssa had ever seen. At a tiny beachfront restaurant in Half Moon Bay, he surprised her by knowing the owner, a former Meridian employee, who had left to pursue his culinary dreams with Hunter's blessing and financial backing. You never mentioned you were an angel investor, Alyssa said as they enjoyed the restaurant's famous Cioppino. Hunter shrugged. Carlos has incredible talent. All he needed was someone to believe in him. You do that a lot, don't you? Believe in people when they need it most. His eyes met hers, full of emotion. I try to. It's what I want to be remembered for, not the size of Meridian's market cap. On their last night in California, they stayed at a secluded cliffside inn in Big Sur. After a dinner served on their private terrace overlooking the Pacific, Hunter seemed unusually contemplative. Penny for your thoughts, Alyssa asked, watching the moonlight play across his features. Hunter took her hand. I've been thinking about what matters most in life. When I took over as CEO 5 years ago, I was convinced that success meant growth, acquisition, expansion. And professionally, maybe it does. But personally, he shook his head. The happiest I've ever been is these past 7 months with you. Alyssa's heart swelled. I feel the same way. I want to build a life with you, Alyssa. Hunter reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I know it hasn't been that long, but when you know, and I've known since I watched you capture Rebecca's wedding through your lens with such care and artistry. He opened the box to reveal a stunning emerald-cut diamond ring set in platinum, with smaller emeralds flanking the center stone. The emeralds reminded me of that green dress you wore on our first date, he explained softly. The one that made your eyes look like sunlight through forest leaves. Tears welled in Alyssa's eyes. Hunter, Alyssa Lewis, will you marry me? Will you partner with me in all aspects of life, challenge me when I need challenging, support me when I need supporting, and let me do the same for you? Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes, absolutely yes. As he slid the ring onto her finger, Alyssa felt a sense of rightness settle over her. This man, who could have chosen anyone, had seen her, truly seen her, and decided she was the one he wanted by his side for life. I should warn you, Hunter said, his eyes dancing with joy as he pulled her into his arms, my mother will insist on hosting an engagement party. I'd like to meet your family, Alyssa replied, meaning it. And I want you to meet my parents too. They're simple people. Dad's a high school history teacher, and Mom runs the local library in the town where I grew up, but they're wonderful. I can't wait, Hunter said sincerely. If they raised you, they must be extraordinary. The engagement announcement created the expected media frenzy, but Alyssa found she no longer cared about the speculation or judgment. She knew who they were together, and that was all that mattered. True to Hunter's prediction, his mother insisted on hosting an engagement party at the O'Connor family estate outside Boston. To Alyssa's surprise and relief, Margaret O'Connor was warm and welcoming, embracing her immediately upon arrival. Hunter's been different since he met you, Margaret confided as she showed Alyssa around the rose garden. Happier, more grounded, you've given him something priceless: perspective. The party itself was elegant but not ostentatious, with close friends and family rather than business associates. Rebecca and Matt were there, delighted that their wedding had sparked the romance. Alyssa's parents, initially overwhelmed by the O'Connor estate, relaxed when they discovered Hunter's father shared their passion for fishing. As the evening wound down, Hunter found Alyssa on the terrace, gazing at the stars. "Happy?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Incredibly," she replied, leaning back against his chest. "Your family is wonderful." "They adore you," Hunter said. "Even my grandmother, who's notoriously hard to impress." Alyssa turned in his arms. "I've been thinking about something. I want to establish a foundation to support young artists, especially photographers from underprivileged backgrounds. I was lucky to have parents who encouraged my passion, but not everyone has that." Hunter's face lit up with pride. "That's an amazing idea. We can set it up however you want." "I'd fund it myself," Alyssa clarified. "I want it to be my contribution, not something you give me." "Of course," Hunter agreed immediately. "Though I'm happy to help with the logistics whenever you're ready." Alyssa rose to her tiptoes to kiss him. "Thank you for understanding. Always," he promised. 6 months later, they were married in a ceremony that blended elegance with personal touches. Alyssa wore a custom gown that managed to be both sophisticated and true to her artistic sensibilities. Hunter's eyes filled with tears when he first saw her walking down the aisle. Rebecca served as maid of honor, whispering to Alyssa just before the ceremony, "I knew you two would be perfect together from the moment I saw him watching you at my wedding." The couple wrote their own vows, each promising to honor the other's dreams and individuality while building a shared life. After the ceremony, instead of a traditional receiving line, they invited guests to write messages on vintage postcards that would be compiled into a keepsake album, an idea that reflected Alyssa's visual creativity. For their honeymoon, they spent 2 weeks exploring the Greek islands, deliberately staying at small, family-run inns rather than luxury resorts. Hunter left his phone off for the entire trip, something his executive team had thought impossible, while Alyssa captured their adventure through her lens, creating a honeymoon portfolio that was just for them. 3 years later, Alyssa's photography foundation was thriving, having already provided mentorship and equipment to dozens of young artists. Her own work had been featured in major galleries, with critics praising her ability to find beauty in unexpected places. Hunter had restructured Meridian's leadership to allow himself more family time, promoting talented executives who shared his vision for ethical business practices. In their Boston brownstone, they created a home that reflected both their tastes: Hunter's appreciation for classic architecture and Alyssa's eye for unique artistic elements. The top floor became Alyssa's studio, flooded with natural light, while the garden level housed Hunter's home office for the days he worked remotely. On a crisp autumn morning, much like the day they'd visited the cabin in the Berkshires early in their relationship, Hunter found Alyssa in her studio, reviewing images from a recent documentary project on urban renewal. "These are powerful," he said, studying the photos over her shoulder. "Thank you," Alyssa smiled up at him. "I think they'll make a strong statement at the exhibition next month." Hunter kissed the top of her head. "I have something to show you." He led her to the spare bedroom that they'd been using for storage. Opening the door, Alyssa gasped. The room had been transformed with fresh paint, a beautiful crib and a rocking chair by the window. "Hunter," she breathed, turning to him with wide eyes. "I know we said we'd wait another year before trying for a baby," he said, suddenly looking nervous. "But I thought we could start preparing. And then I saw this crib that was handmade by a local craftsman, and the chair is from a sustainable forestry project Meridian supports in Vermont." And Alyssa cut off his uncharacteristic rambling with a kiss. "It's perfect timing, actually," she said when they separated. "Because according to the doctor I saw yesterday, we're going to need this room in about 7 months." Hunter's expression transformed from confusion to wonder. "You're pregnant. We're having a baby." Alyssa nodded, laughing as Hunter lifted her in a gentle spin. "I love you," he whispered fiercely, setting her down and placing a hand reverently on her still flat stomach. "Both of you, we love you too," Alyssa replied, covering his hand with hers. As they stood together in what would become their child's nursery, Alyssa thought about the journey that had brought them here, from a chance meeting at a wedding to building a life together that honored both their individual passions and their shared dreams. Through the lens of her camera, she had always sought to capture authentic moments of connection. But her greatest masterpiece wasn't hanging in any gallery. It was the life she and Hunter had created together, frame by precious frame.